music, then this is a show for you, right here at WESU 88.1 FM Middletown.
You're listening to 88.1 FM WESU Middletown, a community service of Wesleyan University. Up next is The Business Buzz with Jeff Sherman, taking a look at innovative and cool technology and businesses right here in Connecticut. Catch The Business Buzz each and every Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. as part of our Monday through Friday 4 p.m. local talk block, only on 88.1 FM WESU Middletown.
The Business Buzz on WESU is proudly sponsored in part by Carlson and Demir, located right here in downtown Middletown. Carlson and Demir providing legal representation for victims of serious injury and for those facing criminal charges. On the web at carlsondemir.com, 860-819-1034.
And welcome to another edition of the Business Buzz. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman. We have Marty Keena in Studio B, as well as Chris Calandra. And Chris, I'll throw it out to you first. Kind of an interesting concept. It was all new to you, kind of just sprung it on you. We have Zach. He's a student at Litchfield High, and he also plays baseball and is a baseball enthusiast. We got on the subject of who can play from past errors and who couldn't. I think that's kind of an interesting topic. What do you think?
I think it is an interesting topic, and it'll be I'm curious to see what somebody younger than the three of us think about that.
That's a big section of the population, by the way.
It's a big section of population, and hopefully we have time to also ask him about whether baseball is in a decline. I know some time ago we had talked about that, but if he's a young enthusiast, I'd be curious to see what he thinks about the direction of baseball in terms of its popularity.
Well, let's bring him on the show. And
I'm having trouble with the connection. Please try.
Oh, looks like we're having trouble with the connection. Looks like he has to call back, I would think.
Yeah, that would be important if he's going to be on.
Yeah, I think so, yes. So, I think it is an interesting concept, though, because...
So how far back are we going to go?
That's what I was wondering.
So do we start, like, say, the 1927 Yankees, Murderers Row, if they played the World Series champ from last year? I don't even know who won the World Series last year. But
that'll be the Cubs.
The Cubs. Well, thank you. Look at that. So, I mean, how would Murderers Row stand up against a major league team
today?
To me,
I think that's more interesting because I think, and we invite Zach to call back, which I think is, I think, like, if you go 1970, okay, whatever.
Okay.
I'm thinking, like, 20s, whatever. What do you think about that, Marty?
Well, the game has morphed. I mean, first of all, think about the strike zone, right? Think about the ball itself has gone through some transformations over the time of how it was manufactured. So you've got the speed of the ball coming in. The pitchers are much bigger. I don't think they had many 6'5" guys throwing, pills down the middle in the 1926. But athletes, I think athletes can adapt anywhere. So I'd be anxious to hear who he's choosing.
Let's see, as Chris said, someone from a younger perspective. Zach, are you there?
Yes.
And I like that about your persistence. See, that's what Litchfield's all about,
There
right?
you go. Resilience,
you
Zach.
get shut off.
Learning from the master.
Yeah, learning from the master. That's true. To say yes, correct?
Yes.
So, before we get into our discussion, you can tell a little bit about yourself in terms of from a baseball perspective. You are a baseball player. You're on the baseball team at Litchfield High, correct?
Yes.
And what position do you play?
I play everywhere. I'm a utility player, mostly infield pitcher.
Nice. And what is your batting average now?
I'm not sure.
Okay, there you go. Statistics don't mean anything. Winning, it's all about.
Cybernetics.
So the concept started when we were talking about, in fact, it was question 21, Marty, on my test.
Yeah.
and it was, could Babe Ruth play today? And Chris, do you know what half the students said?
Who's Babe Ruth?
Who's Babe Ruth?
No, he's dead. That's not what I'm. Yeah. So anyway, Zach was one of the few that said, I think with proper training, he might be able to or whatever. So the question is, Zach, and I think it's an interesting discussion point, and we had a good concept. I'm going to throw it out to the studio, the other studio first, Zach, and that is, Zach had a good point. He thinks that the position players could make the transition relatively quickly, whereas the pitchers, there'd be a short list. Chris first, then Marty.
I think it makes sense. I mean, if you take a very good fielding player, whether it's infield or outfield or even catcher for that matter, they could probably adjust in the field.
How about batting?
Quite easily. Batting, I would think, it would probably be an easier adjustment. I don't know how technology's advanced with bats, though. Like, how much of an impact does that have?
I think that would be to their advantage.
The oak bat versus the ash bat, all that kind of stuff.
I think that would work towards their advantage. Now, Marty, do you agree with that concept that Zach kind of articulated, that it would be more it would be more of an advantage for position players, outfielders, infielders, so on and so forth, than pitchers?
I think it would, and I think the parallel argument goes back to early on where they had that argument about the Negro Leagues. Would the Negro League players have been able to translate into Major League Baseball? So when we get into this conversation, I'm sure we have to take into account some of the greats from the Negro League.
That's true, too.
That could have perhaps been able to perform.
No question. So, Zach, let's come up with the list of players, and you agree, or you're standing firm with your assertion that the position players would have an easier transition?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Now, then let's start with pitchers. To start, we agreed that Sandy Koufax could make it, correct?
Yes.
Who else? Now, was it who's the train, Marty?
The only train I can think of was out of football. That was Night Train Lane, but I can't think of the train that would have been
Zach,
in
do you remember
baseball.
who the train was? Remember we talked about that? The pitcher, Cleveland, Grover Cleveland?
Grover Cleveland?
Yes. No, Johnson. Yes.
Grover Cleveland Alexander?
No, it was Johnson. And it was funny, Chris, because I think I had a conversation with Zach, and he was talking about how fast, and then he said, well, when they really did the deep dive, he wasn't that fast, and there is one recorded scientific measurement, and all the players at that time, talking like the 20s, said, the ball whistled, and that's why they say it's a train, because he was so fast. But then when they actually had the Department of Defense measure how fast the baseball was, it was 85.
Yeah, it would be difficult to be successful at 85.
Zach, do you agree with that some of these junk ballers, let's say Whitey Ford, others, would be lit up?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's definitely a different game in terms of pitching. It's more towards the high-speed fastball now, 100 miles an hour. So I think they'd have a difficult time adjusting.
Okay, so I said Sandy Koufax. We agree with that. Do you have a couple other names from the past that you think could play?
Well, I had said Greg Maddux because we saw what Kyle Hendricks did last year.
Well, I wouldn't consider Greg Maddux an old-timer.
Well, it depends how old you are, Marty.
That's true.
Right.
Okay.
Try and hide how old you are, Marty.
So
I have his rookie card.
Yeah. So, Greg Maddux, I would agree with that. How about any of the old schoolers? How about, let's say, what do you think, Chris? Who do you think could do it?
Well, what about, like, say, a Tom Seaver?
Tom Seaver.
Don Drysdale.
Do you agree with Tom Seaver there, Zach?
Yeah, I think he could definitely make the adjustment.
I think Tom Seaver could. I think Don Drysdale, I don't know if you know who he was. I think he could.
Larry Carlton.
Steve Carlton could. I think,
Juan Marichal?
Maybe not. He wasn't really fast.
Okay, but that deceptive move that he had, maybe?
He'd be okay. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Anyone else, Zach?
J.R. Richard.
J.R. Richard. Do you know who he was, Zach?
Yes, I've heard.
I think he could. It was unfortunate. He was like a
stroke.
He was really delivering the high heat, but then he had a stroke, and his obviously career was derailed. But I think he was throwing close to like 97. Anyone else that comes to mind?
Bob Gibson was one that I.
Oh, yeah.
Bob Gibson could definitely play today.
Chin music there, baby.
There's no question about it. Now, how about position players? We agree that like Ted Williams could play, correct?
Yep, Ted Williams.
Willie Mays.
Yep.
And then we have, how about the question 21? Babe Ruth. Do you think he could play today?
I think he could. I think it'd take a bit of... I mean, the era we're in for baseball now is all about home runs and strikeouts, so I think that would also play into his advantage.
Good point. I like that. And now, how about the whole thing? The obvious, elephant in the room is his training or lack thereof. I mean, he wasn't exactly going to be
hot dogs.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you think that he could overcome that with modern day training?
I think he could. I think he'd get better. I still think he'd have to be a designated hitter, though. I don't know if he could play the field.
I like that. What do you think about that, Chris? Designated hitter. I don't think he could get around in the outfield.
Well, maybe at Fenway, because think about the ballparks back in the day. You had Ebbets Field, and you had the Polo Grounds, and you had, sure, they had Fenway and Wrigley back then, but these ballparks today are much bigger than what the guys had to play with at one time. So the baseball may have flown a little less because of the way it was manufactured, but the ballparks were smaller. So the shelf, maybe in the old Yankee Stadium where they could poke it up there, and now even maybe in Fenway, those parks they might be able to work, but some of the larger ones, I'm not so sure.
So you're saying, Marty, that Babe Ruth, and listen to this one, Zach. I believe Marty's saying that Babe Ruth took advantage of the short porches. You don't think he could hit it out he could hit it out, but not with the rhythm, with the consistency that he did back then. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah, I'm just asking the question.
I agree. I think Babe Ruth would have a very, very hard time competing today.
So, Zach, you hear what Studio B, don't agree with me, don't know, they're always wrong. Just kidding.
We got number 21 wrong on that one.
So, yes. So, do you agree with them that and I think, actually, I'm only kidding, I think they have good points, that they took advantage of shorter fields. I mean, back then, the parks, well, that's not really true. Some of the parks were huge, like, in Philadelphia, I mean, he was like, and Pittsburgh. In fact, Zach, it's really funny that Willie Stargell, do you know him?
Yes.
His wife at the time used to chart all the home runs he could have hit, but he was in, I forgot what field.
Three Rivers.
No, Three Rivers is when he had his glory days.
Oh, okay.
It was something, it doesn't make a difference. It was an old park, and I think center field was close to like 480 feet.
Wow.
So, yeah, and he hit like almost
Dead
500
zone.
home runs.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit. Chris has a good point, Zach, about the game.
Yeah.
You play. How about the peers, the people that you associate with, you hang out with at Litchfield? Are they less interested in baseball than you may want?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going down, especially with the younger demographics. I mean, I know our baseball program in the Parks and Rec department, we've had a declining number every year since I've been in Little League, and they're even cutting teams now, so it's definitely becoming less popular.
Oh, that's interesting. They're cutting teams
How
now.
far does it go, Zach? You go from Little League to what are the next levels up in the different the leagues as you go up?
So Little League is up until age 12, and then Babe Ruth is 13 through 15.
Yep.
And then Connie Mack is 16 through 19. That's what I'm in now.
Wow.
And now for Litchfield High, how many fans do you get for a game? Oh, you like that one, Chris?
It's usually a family affair.
That doesn't sound like a big number's coming.
We'll move on. Now, Chris had a good point. And why don't you ask the question, Chris, about going forward about the game itself?
Yeah, I mean, aside from the youth baseball, which seems to be in decline in terms of the numbers, Zach, can you talk to us about being a fan of Major League Baseball? Because it seems to us, we're older, of course, is that there's a good fan base, but looking out over the next 10, 20, 30 years, I think we expect that fan base would decline, and Major League Baseball is not going to gain, but will probably lose over the next generation. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that's a big problem, because a lot of people nowadays, they don't want to sit through 9 innings of a game, and even if it's going to the stadium, not many people go anymore, and no one watches on TV because it takes too long. So
do you have any suggestions from a young person's perspective that you might employ to kind of reverse this?
Well, I think that the pitch clock that the MLB put into play this year is a good idea, to try to shorten time, mound visits, and between pitches. So hopefully that can shorten games and get more people involved.
Okay.
What are they doing instead, Zach? What are the options that kids are being drawn to other than to go out on the diamond?
Well, lacrosse is big now in the spring. There's spring soccer, there's track and field, so there's a lot of different options now.
Now, do you find that your best athletes go out for best baseball, or are they being attracted to these other things? Not to say that you're not one of the best athletes, but from your perspective, when you look at your own cohort, are the better ball players that could have been on the baseball team going out for lacrosse, going out for that track because there's a little bit more activity?
Yeah, I think so, because track and lacrosse, both in Litchfield, I know there's quite a few people who used to play with me, and now they switched to sports. So I know we definitely lost a couple of our better guys to that.
Interesting. Now, again, kind of in the closing moment, Zach, can you, we talked about, can you identify people from the, well, let's ask first things first. Do you think there's a dividing line where, a certain era is kind of null and void? Because I do. I'm not trying to influence your, decision making, but I think anything like, you can be talking like, I don't know, when you get to like 1910 or 1920, I find that a big jump. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, like 1920, I believe that was the end of the dead ball era. And so that's when the ball started flying out.
But, I mean, those players, I think the caliber of play was nowhere near what it is now. So I think that's kind of dividing. But in terms of, let's say, from the 40s on, can you name like 4 players that you think could easily make the transition? I think to kind of cue things up, I would think Willie Mays would be one. Maybe can you name some others that you think would just be like a shoo-in even without any kind of, re-engineering?
I think Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio are 2 that come to mind from the Yankees. I think Jackie Robinson would be able to do it. He was very athletic, so I think that would play to his advantage.
Yeah, in fact, Jackie Robinson started, a little late in a career. I don't know exactly what age. I think he was pushing 30 or might have been 30, but his stats were phenomenal. So I would definitely agree with that.
He was a 4-sport letterman at UCLA.
He was fantastic.
Yeah. What about Stan the Man Musial?
I think he would be able to make the transition.
I agree with that, Marty. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, and I think like Willie McCovey we talked about. I think he could make it. Chris, anyone that comes to your mind from the old school? I think Reggie Jackson. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like
Reggie was the start of the new era, I would imagine.
Yeah, 70s and 80s, right? Late 70s, 80s.
That was my question for Zach at some point was, does he feel as though the business of baseball changed baseball? You go with Curt Flood when he had the clause where he had the free agency. That changed baseball, and so I'm wondering, do you view some of the business aspects as changing the game?
I think so, because, even in recent years we saw John Carlos Stanton 2 years ago, I believe, the biggest contract in MLB history, and Alex Rodriguez and all these players who were getting signed to these massive deals for 8 to 10 years. And it just kind of, in my opinion, it doesn't let the team have mobility to sign anyone else, so it's kind of like they're locking in for these players. Yeah,
I would agree with that. And the other thing is I also think that, just from my perspective, is like, Chris, what do you think of that? If you're like 25 years old and you're making $20 million a year, you do want to win. But if you don't win, you're not going to exactly, go into therapy.
Yeah, it was a harder-nosed game,
yes.
Back then because of the money and
they were selling used cars in the off season.
Yeah,
insurance, sports equipment.
And I think the other thing is those eras also had a greater number of characters, just personality, like
Billy Martin
and some of the stuff Babe Ruth did, and they would go out.
Actually, let me interject because that's a great point. Zach, what do you think of that? I mean, I know you kind of grew up in the modern era, but it seems like the game's gotten kind of very purified, vanilla. There's not the kind of characters that Chris is talking about that kind of leads people, even like a Reggie Jackson. He says, I'm the straw that stirs the drink, so on and so forth. Do you think that kind of those personalities, like a Mickey Mantle, are missing from the game now?
Yeah, I think there definitely is. It's a little more censored nowadays. There's not as many people who are willing to speak out and just kind of act however they want. I think Manny Ramirez was the last guy I can really think of that was really like that.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well,
could I ask one question
go
before
ahead.
I let him go? looking at the era today, who are your top four? I'm sure Mike Trout would be in there. You got the guy from the Nationals, Harper. Who's going to be a $500 million man with the Yankees in a couple years.
Yeah.
So who else you got up there that's going to be the new studs? The kids from the Cubs, like a Rizzo or?
Oh, don't tell them all at once.
No, I'm just saying. Okay.
I like Chris Bryant from the Cubs. I think he's going to be really good. I also like Nolan Arenado from Colorado.
Oh, okay. I have to watch that one.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, Chris, you have a final question for Zach here.
Who's going to win the World Series?
There, I like perfect.
Well, I would say the Red Sox, but I'm a little biased. But I really, I don't know. I have a feeling. I think the Dodgers are going to have a good shot this year.
Oh.
Well, Zach from Litchfield High, you did a great job. Now, gentlemen, how poised has he been? Chris, to you first. I mean,
Hey, listen, anybody that could put up with the three of us, they show poise, especially at
and he
an
called
early
in.
age.
He called back in.
there you go. But, Zach, you did a great job, but no extra points on any tests.
Oh, okay.
Have a great weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. And we invite any other callers to, or listeners, I should say, to call in at 860-685-7700, 860-685-7700. Marty, I thought Zach did a really great job. No, really, he really did.
Absolutely.
And he knew his stuff.
Yeah.
And I think now you wouldn't want to have this, every week, this subject, but I think it's an interesting subject.
I think it's great. I would have liked to go on position by position because I think, as we said earlier, the position players would have had an easier way of transferring. So at third base, I'm going to put Brooks Robinson.
Wow, there you go.
Okay. At shortstop, I'm going to put Ozzie, the Wizard. Okay. I'm going to put Ozzie Smith there.
He could play defense in any era.
Any era, right? Second base, I'm kind of going. I don't know. I'm not a big. I don't know a lot of second basemen. For some reason, I'm coming up with a blank for second base.
Let's see what our caller has to say. We got a caller. Caller, are you there?
Yes. How you doing?
Good. So you're calling in. You heard the discussion, and it's all about making the transition from. Now, let me ask you the first. Making the transition from past times to now. Let me ask you the first question right up front. By the way, what's your name?
Joe Callahan.
Joe. Okay, Joe. Where are you calling from?
Philadelphia.
Well, you're listening online. Good for you. Awesome. Yeah. We got. See, our listener base is expanding, Chris.
Carlton.
So listen.
You're changing lives throughout the world, baby.
Yep. Do you think there's a line of demarcation? In other words, like in a certain era, like you're talking Ty Cobb, like the 1910, 1920s, that you just write that off. That's not going to happen, and that's just like the game was completely different. Do you agree with that?
The transition to today.
In other words, do you think there's a line, there's a certain point where, okay, you can look at the 40s, the 50s, but, I mean, when you're talking about the 20s, that's kind of,
I don't know, but you look at some of those players, like somebody like Ty Cobb was a whack job. The fact is that he was such a competitive player that I think he probably could have played in any era.
And you had a point.
He was so competitive, and he was such a hard-nosed player that I don't know. Short term, could he make the adjustment? I don't know, but long term, he was probably so passionate and so driven that I don't know. Maybe Ty Cobb could have played in this era.
So, what do you think overall about in terms of these old, like a Ted Williams? That's a shoo-in. I don't think he needs any re-engineering. Mickey Mantle in his before he got injured. Willie Mays, Willie McCovey, all those guys, they're good to go. Maybe even Yaz. But what do you think overall about these old schoolers making it into the modern era? Do you think it's a fantasy, or what do you think? Now they went from 85 miles an hour. Now you're talking 102.
Yeah, but I don't think the speed of the baseball is what makes it difficult to hit, because I think if you throw a 102 mile an hour fastball, these guys are going to be able to catch up and hit. And I think guys from past eras would be able to make the adjustments and hit a fastball at 102 miles an hour. I think that a lot of what made these guys great was the fact that their passion for the sport and their ability to make adjustments. Now, again, they didn't have the training rituals and stuff like that guys have today. But I think if they lived today, they'd be training and eating differently. And
so, wait, listen. I like that point, Joe. What do you think of that, Chris? That Joe thinks that their ethic, their drive, these guys are competitive people, and with a little bit better training, lay off the hot dogs, forget about the cigarettes.
Sure.
That these guys could do it. What do you think? Yes or no?
No, I think it's definitely possible. It's just you got to adjust for the size. People are just bigger today.
Ooh, wait a second. That is a great point, Joe. What do you think of that? You got people. That's a great point. Like Mickey Mantle was a big guy for that era, but he'd be just an also-ran.
Do you think a lot of those guys is natural their size? Because you look at some, you look at some NFL football players today. There's no way these guys are naturally that big. There's no way that you look at the population adjustment. There's no way that the size of humanity has grown that much in that short of a time period without some kind of, I don't know, human growth hormone or whatever you want.
So it's artificial means. Okay.
I think a lot of these guys. I think these guys just learn today. I think most of these guys. I don't know if they're still doing.
See,
it.
I actually think
it's
it's
a better way of masking it.
No, but I actually think, Joe, that that might be a factor, especially in the 90s. But I really believe that, these guys, the old guys, were going out to bars, hanging out. It was a good old boy thing, puffing some butts. But I think nowadays that's totally off. They got nutritionists. These guys are getting paid big bucks. They're working out. They're lifting weights. There's no way a baseball player in the 50s even knew what a weight room was. Chris first, then back to Joe, then Marty.
Yeah, I mean, if it depends on how you want to do this hypothetical. If you took, let's say, one of those teams and you transported them and they showed up and played against the 2016 Major League club, I think they would get wiped out. They would get wiped out. Now, if you're saying, hey, if they had a few years to train and drink protein shakes and,
Nutrisystem.
Yeah, right. Then I think, some of that athleticism from that era and that hard-nosed play would come out. But, just to show up, I think they would get their tails handed to them.
Okay, I like that one. Marty, what do you think of Joe? Then you're next. Marty, what do you think of that? I think Chris has an excellent point. If they showed up, it's an electrocution. If you had 2 years to get trained and nutrition, then we can have a discussion. What do you think? Except for certain players like Gibson and,
Sure, and I would say that even Jackie Robinson would have no problem getting in there. So the athletes, I think that's what we said early on. Athletes would probably have no difficulty. But, yes, certainly the training techniques would certainly be something that they'd want to catch up with.
But do you believe that if they just were transported, like beamed, like Star Trek, they would be electrocuted?
I don't know about electrocuted. I'm a big fan of Field of Dreams, and I have a feeling that some of those guys would be okay.
So, Joe from Philadelphia, do you agree with me and Chris, that if they were beamed like Star Trek into right now, modern day, they would be like the 27 Yankees would be electrocuted. But if you gave them time to train and get into shape and all that kind of adjust, so you agree with that thesis?
Yeah, I think that yes, there's because it'd be the game has changed dramatically from like the 1927s, you're talking about 27 Yankees, to today. But I think that a lot of things, like I said before, a lot of what made those players great was the fact their passion, and they didn't want to get beaten. They wouldn't want to get beat by a
I think they have more of that, Chris. What do you think?
Oh, they have much more heart and enthusiasm, and they would play 110%.
Double headers.
And then run out fly balls and run out sack bunts. And, they would do a lot of things that today's Major League players are just not willing to do.
They were the ones that wrote the unwritten laws, You brush back, you hit the guy that hit your pitcher. I mean, those are the guys that built up those unwritten laws of baseball. So they understand the game.
So, Joe, who would be, let's talk about position. No, let's talk about pitchers first. Tell me your short list, top list of, let's say, anyone from the 50s till like late the 80s, whatever, past errors that could easily make the transition. What would be on your list?
That's a tough one. I mean,
anybody from the Phillies?
Anybody from
I think
the
Carlton could.
Steve Carlton was unbelievable.
I think Koufax could.
Yeah, and again, those guys were pitching 130 pitches a game. Today, you get these guys on pitch counts. You got a hangnail; they're out for a week or two. Warren Spahn's another one.
There's one. Yep. Warren Spahn. Yeah,
Feller could.
Feller. Yeah.
I think Drysdale could. Gibson could definitely. And Gibson, oh my God, how funny would that be, Joe? Gibson would brush someone back, and they'd have a tissy fit. He'd go after him.
Yeah,
he would.
He would stand there and say, "Come on, buddy, right now."
That is a good point. Those players would make some Major League players cry.
They would cry. You're talking to me, buddy. So, Anyway, Joe, it's a great discussion. Any closing comments? What do you think about the game itself? You think it's in permanent decline, or do you think there's hope?
You know, I don't know, something about going to a ballpark on a beautiful summer day and hanging out and just watching a baseball game and the pace of it, and it's one of these. You know, I've done it with my son, so it's almost like a father-son transition and stuff like that. I don't know. I still love the game. I still love watching the game.
But Joe, is it going to spend the money at a major league ball game? Let's say you go down to the park there in Philly. Or do you get the same satisfaction by going to the minor league park? Baseball is alive at the minor league park because of its affordability and it's perhaps a little bit more fan-friendly. What do you think of that?
And closer.
Good point. The thing is down in Philadelphia, actually, it's closer to go to the professional major leagues than it is to go to minor leagues.
And it's very easy. You just take a subway to the stadium. So it's easier than even going to the Rockcats. It's like about as easy as it gets.
Right.
Well, Joe, thanks for calling. Anything you would do in baseball now differently to kind of reboot some interest?
You know, it seems to me what happens to baseball, especially when you get into the playoffs and stuff like that, these games start so damn late, and kids can't watch them. I remember when
even the World Series
Phillies had their run. The Phillies had the run down here from 07 to about 11. You know, I'd have to fight with the boy's mother to try and, you know, in the middle of a school night to keep these guys up so they can watch these games, realizing that, you know, the run could be very short. As you know, right now the Phillies.
Yeah, they're pretty bad. No, I think that's a great point, Joe, because they were like, let's say, short-term greedy. It started in the 70s. They had all the playoffs, all the work at night. Whereas when I was in elementary school, we'd have transistor radios in our crayon boxes, listening to the '71 World Series.
Yep.
Absolutely. So, Joe, can I ask you a question? Maybe you know the answers. I'm scratching my head here in terms of the Negro leagues. I'm coming up with Satchel Paige. I'm having a feeling that he might be able to manage.
Josh Gibson could.
Josh Gibson is the guy that. And what was there a Buck somebody?
Buck Henry, I think.
No, Buck Henry. That's a comedian.
I think it's
really. Buck Rogers was in outer space.
Buck Rogers.
So Josh Gibson, I think, is the one.
I think his name was Buck Henry.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, Joe, thanks so much for joining us on the show. You have any? Go ahead.
I have a trivia question. One of these trivia questions is a Satchel Paige question. Is the only player in the Major League Hall of Fame who's a starting pitcher with a losing record, and it's Satchel Paige, because most of his pitching he did was in the Negro League. So when he came up and he finally did pitch in the major leagues, it was the tail end of his career.
And they never really knew how old he was, did they?
Never really. Yeah, I mean, all that thing too. Yeah. So.
Thanks a lot, Joe. Great call. Keep listening from Philadelphia.
Good conversation. I liked it.
Awesome. Take care. Thank you.
Wow.
That was a little
intergalactic here.
And we invite anyone else a final call on this in terms of baseball transition. Who could play? Who couldn't? 860-685-7700. Now we're going to transition a little bit into our week in politics and pop culture, and we have this to start.
Like I said, it's quite clear to me that they're trying to use me as a distraction, and I'm not going to be collateral damage for this fool.
Kathy,
I think he's a fool. So I'm going to say I think the president
we're
is
sort
a
of
fool.
going on this way. So.
I can say that.
Do you have fear for your career after this storm dies down?
Absolutely. I don't think I will have a career after this. I'm going to be honest. He broke me.
Okay, so Chris first, then Marty. We were talking about Kathy Griffin.
Yeah.
Do you feel sorry for her at all?
No, and it's just amazing to me. I hadn't heard the clip. That she's saying that Donald Trump did something to her. It's hard to imagine.
I caught the same thing. It's like
how did he do anything to her? Now he did send out a tweet, but the backlash against her ranged from liberals to conservatives.
Yeah, it was across the board.
I mean, it was everybody, because it was, and she said it herself. I mean, she said, I moved the line, and then I went past that line. It was not funny.
I think she thought it was going to be a career booster, riding the anti-Trump thing,
Sure.
Take it to a new level.
Right.
Career over, Chris?
I don't think it'll be over, but it'll die down for a while, and she'll have to rebuild herself. But America loves a comeback story, so it'll take a little while. But no, I wouldn't say over.
Marty, do you feel sorry for her?
I don't feel sorry for her. I feel I feel sorry for her in the fact that her career, I've made mistakes in my career, and I've had to suffer some of the consequences. So I know the feeling that she's going through. Her gut is probably wrenching, and she's projecting probably a lot of things worse than that will happen to her. So I think she's probably learned something here, that there are lines that need to be met. But the line was crossed, and I don't care who the president is. You don't want to be promoting that kind of an image.
I actually disagree slightly with both of you. I think that this could be, sometimes you have career limiting moves. I think this is a career ender. She was not an A-plus player to begin. If she was A-plus, like Chris Rock, you can run with that. Whatever, go to therapy for 6 months. Whatever. I believe that this is Asta Nuega.
This might be parallel to the Richards comedian that played Kramer.
That's exactly what it is. When he had the N word,
and then he went off the rim, and then now you don't even see him anywhere.
I think it's parallel to that. I do agree that he would have been very viable. He did the stand up. He could have been in other shows. Sometimes you just go, even though obviously there's a lot of anti-Trumpism, rightfully or wrongfully so, but. It is what it is.
Can I ask you a
Go
question?
Ahead, you can ask me anything.
So, because the media is so liberal and so strongly aligned against Donald Trump, granted she's been hurt by this, but from a marketing standpoint, Jeff, you're the marketing guru. Was it good advice for her to go out in this press conference and to attack Donald Trump, or would she have been better served to just lay low, lean on the fact that she apologized, and then just wait for the storm to blow over? What would you have advised her to do?
You've been appointed marketing guru. That's exactly doing this. First of all, I threw a rock through Marty's window. I'm not going to blame Marty for having his window closed.
Or something.
Yeah. I threw the rock, okay? I mean, I don't even care if you hate Donald Trump. That's not even the issue. It's you threw the rock, suck it up, and then I think I'd go on a hiatus for a little while and let things chill.
Yeah.
Marty, what do you think?
Absolutely. Lay low. The ripples are still going out, from the center. So, I mean, the fact that she's been fired, she's been fired for that one gig that she gets every year at New Year's Eve. All her stand-ups,
and endorsement deals.
Yep. So, I mean, it's going to come back and bite her, and hopefully she's been a good saver because it's going to take her a while to kind of come back and get a constant salary.
I believe she was the spokesperson or had an ad campaign with Squatty Potty, and they bounced her.
I don't know how much she got. It's not like Marty getting cut from like intramurals. I mean, the New Year's. I bet what do you think she got paid for that, Chris?
I mean, you probably didn't make a lot of money, but I think that's the kind of thing that gives you so much exposure for everything else. That's like your launching point for your.
I agree. That's your foundation of your career.
Right. Probably didn't pay that
probably
much.
about $1.5 million.
No, not that much. I would say she got paid $350. $350.
Yeah. But you do it all day long, because then when you go out on tour, it's all the exposure you get from that.
$350 is nothing to sneeze at. I mean,
listen, if
pays the rent.
Yeah.
So then we have something else in the news, and we'll play a little clip on that.
Election took place in my country, and I know it has left some here and elsewhere feeling uncertain about the future. I obviously understand that uncertainty. And while I can't stand here and speculate about what policies our president-elect will pursue, I will tell you this: in the time that I have spent in public life, one of the things I have learned is that some issues look a little bit different when you're actually in office compared to when you're on the campaign trail. And the truth is that climate change shouldn't be a partisan issue in the first place. It isn't a partisan issue for our military leaders at the Pentagon who...
So, Marty, I'll kick it off to you first. Trump bowing out of the Paris Accords. Your reaction?
I'm not shocked because it was a campaign promise, but I'm dismayed that within the White House, he tended to go with the Bannon group rather than his own daughter and son-in-law who have children. His grandchildren will suffer from this decision, but they really won't because by the time, the action actually has to take place in 2020, Trump won't even be in the picture.
So, two things. Marty says that your reaction to the climate change, but he asserts that Trump will not be in the picture by 2020. Your input on that?
I don't know if that's the point Marty was making, or just that by the time climate change has an effect.
No, he says he'll be out of office by 2020.
Well, I think he will be out of office by 2020,
That's what I'm saying,
and I also believe that with those things happening, the United States will have been able to pull back from that declaration and will be back on course as a world leader.
And so you equate it with being a world leader.
That's one of the things I equate it with.
Okay. And how much temperature was it going to reduce?
It's about the future, Jeff. It's not about tomorrow.
No, but in the next 100 years. Chris, do you know the answer
2
to
degrees.
that?
0.2.
2 degrees.
It was 0.2.
Right. And so the next time you guys are searching the web, go online and look at the way that the seas are going to be rising, the coastal facilities and families and cities around our country. Look at Miami, look at New York, look at Philly, right? They're all going to be waterlogged another 10 or 12 miles in from where they are now. Millions of people.
How long a time?
Within the next 30 years.
Okay. Chris, do you worry about that?
If you look at Hurricane Sandy, you might want to.
I'm going to give a more nuanced answer. I don't worry specifically about that, but I do worry about having a clean environment, taking care of our planet, using technology and using what we've learned to live our lives with a smaller footprint. I think all of that is good, but I believe that this climate change, warming, I think that's way, way overdone.
Well, I think people who are actually some of our more business-oriented leaders, we saw Elon Musk, he left some of the presidential committees that he was trying to be a part of as a protest, if you will. Disney's against it, General Electric's against it, Google's against it, Goldman Sachs is against it, Microsoft. So we're not just talking about Marty and Studio B. We're talking about some serious companies that have shareholders that look beyond the quarter and they look into the future and they realize that this decision was the wrong decision.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the agreement was good for the United States, Marty?
It was good for the planet.
I know.
This
Do you
was
think
a
it was good for the
planet
United
decision.
But that wasn't the question.
Yeah, please answer the question.
Do I think it was good for America? Yes, because we're part of the planet.
Okay. Chris, do you think it was good for America?
I don't think so. I mean, but the reality is, despite the breathlessness in the media, is that I did some research, because I'm a geek, is that United States CO2 emissions in the last decade have dropped by 12%. We used to be the largest emitter of CO2. We're now second, and we've reduced more than anybody else. So the free market, technology, the mindset that we have in this country and through the world, it's already working. We don't need the leaders of the world to come together and have a top-down approach. It's happening anyway. So I don't think if we move out of the Paris Agreement like we seem to have done means that my great-grandchildren are going to be walking around with gas masks. I just don't see the connection.
And I can agree with you to a point, because now we're starting to see, as I made earlier, one of my predictions for the next couple of years was that the municipalities were going to become more powerful. So now we're starting to see cities like Pittsburgh, responded to the president's comment. California, as a huge economy, is moving forward. So as you're saying, there are going to be some companies and municipalities that move forward anyway, and maybe it won't be as bad, but it doesn't look good for America to be aligned with Nicaragua and Syria as the only 3 countries in the world that don't want to go along with this.
I actually thought, Chris, it was America, unlike Marty the globalist, asserting itself as a sovereign nation. What do you think of that, Chris?
I agree. I find it a unique argument to say that we're not leaders, because usually a leader...
I think it's the opposite.
Is the opposite. Yeah, exactly. Just because France and Germany and all these other people said they're going to do something, but this is a voluntary, non-binding agreement. And, we have this whole Russia thing. So Russia's in the agreement, but we're supposed to trust Russia. We're supposed to trust China.
Yeah, you selectively trust.
So Donald Trump made a decision, and I think he is showing leadership. Now, if CO2 emissions start going up and we start destroying our environment and we stop the progress that has begun I would not be in favor of that. But that's not what Donald Trump said. He said he'd like to renegotiate it so it's more fair for the U.S. because the U.S.
had to pay reparations.
Had staked out a position that would be hurtful to us. China, who's the largest producer, doesn't have to do anything until like 2030.
I wonder what our callers have to say about this, about the climate agreement and Trump essentially pulling out of it. It's 860-685-7700, 860-685-7700. Good or a bad thing? Is it the end of the world? Hiccup? Was it good politically? Chris, I'll ask you the question first, then Marty. Was it good politically or needed politically?
It was very good politically. Anytime Donald Trump breaks conformity, it's good for him. And Marty acknowledged that it was a campaign pledge. And so if Donald Trump commits to the campaign pledge and does what he said he was going to do, he gets beat up that he actually did it. And if he doesn't do it, he gets beat up because he lied to everybody.
And how much of it is that no matter what he does, he's going to get beat up?
And he doesn't just get beat up. I mean, there was stuff like, he's killing our great grandchildren. And, Marty gave a very reasoned response. We had a good dialogue. I accept some of his points. He accepts some of my points. But some of the stuff in the media is like, people are going to die just because we left this voluntary, non-binding agreement where each country decided on the standards for which they wanted to participate. I don't think leaving is that really big of a deal, but it is good politically for Donald Trump because
Marty,
was
it good
promise.
Politically?
It was good for his base, and so his politics it seems to work out fairly well. It works for Bannon's politics. The fact that there's the three factions within the West Wing, that faction happened to win on this one. There'll be other arguments down the road that maybe they won't.
I think it would have been suicide for him not to do this with his base.
Yeah,
because
and his base is what 37%. So, 37% is not a majority.
Yes. I wouldn't jump and be too gleeful.
I'm not gleeful. I'm concerned.
Okay. About him leaving because it's all about, who said this? It's all about the economy. If the economy's bad,
yes,
in 3 years, he's gone.
Yep.
If the economy's good, guess what?
Well,
he's
think
there.
about the economy based on
when you're
coal, like coal. There's no business in coal anymore. Even China is pulling back from coal. Yeah. They're building more nukes than anybody in the world. So the fact that he's making a decision that he wants to bring coal back to America, coal is dead. Coal is dead in the coal towns. They even know it's dead. So the fact that he's trying to promote something that economically it's not going to happen.
Radical liberalism, we would have a nuclear industry, wouldn't we, Marty?
Well, I think if it wasn't for 3 Mile Island, we would have
so
had
an overreaction to something that happened.
Let me just jump in, Marty, as a conservative. Listen, coal may very well go away, and I'd have no problem if it went away, but I don't think the government should intercede and decide coal should go away. Rather, as technology advances and clean fuels become more economically viable and there's technological developments, coal will probably go the way of the horse and buggy.
Go away.
That's perfectly fine.
Gasoline will go away.
It is, right.
But the government interceding, especially prematurely and ineffectively, is, I don't think, a good thing. The fact that coal goes away, there's lots of industries that have gone away over the course of this country.
The other thing is, if Trump, as a business person, Chris and Marty had a plan, says, okay, I don't need to be involved in this mega globalist, creation of distribution of wealth, but had a real program to say we're going to take care of it ourselves, and in 3 years we're doing drill baby drill and get off Mideast oil, then start transitioning into hydrogen.
Sure.
By the way, what happened to Obama? He was Mr. Global Warming. Did he have any plan to get into hydrogen that we're abundant with?
I don't think so.
I didn't see that happening. No. Go ahead.
I just wanted to bring up another point, which is a little bit of a tangent. But what bothers me about this is that we have this imperial presidency. And for people that want to knock Donald Trump, just remember that President Obama unilaterally signed on to this agreement. Treaties in this country by the Constitution are supposed to be ratified by the Senate. And if you do business that way and you pass it through the Senate, then the next president just can't come and not do it or change his mind. We have this imperial presidency where
Obama never reached out to even his own party.
He never even put it up for vote because he knew he would lose, and he wouldn't probably even have gotten a lot of his own party to support it. But the point is, when you try and run the country based on that,
that's a great way politically, because if you do that, then you can blame the other side. Isn't it true?
That's right. And and I hope, if Donald Trump is listening, which he probably isn't, I think he should put the Paris Accord up for a vote in the Senate.
That would be the better
and let everybody vote for it, so that it's not just Donald Trump's decision.
Why didn't he do that? That would have been That would have been a great political move.
And let Joe Manchin from West Virginia, a Democrat, let him vote against.
He never would have. He would have lost in the Senate. Politically, Trump makes some mistakes. Because I agree with you, Chris. He should have had it up for a vote. Say, listen, it's a formal treaty. We need to put it into the Senate.
And he could even go on record to say, listen, if it was up to me, I think we should pull out. That's my opinion. But senators,
that would have been a great move. Why didn't he do it, Marty? It would have lost, by the way.
I think he was probably too busy talking to the Russians.
Oh, God. Come on. Be real.
I'm only teasing you guys. You know I'm going to tweak you a little bit. I got about 4 minutes left.
But I think that's a problem with President Obama when he was having trouble getting stuff through. But that's by design in this country. And he would say, well, if they're not going to act, I'm going to act. Well, if you do it that way, then you run the great risk that the next guy who may not agree with you, or woman, that doesn't agree with you, could just undo it with the same pen that you used to enact it. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened.
You should have done that. That would have been great.
Well, in the last 2 minutes, let's talk about Hillary.
Yes.
And she takes responsibility, but it's like a kid saying, I take responsibility for cracking up the car, but it really was my fault because a tree hit me and it fell, and I didn't know.
I take a full responsibility. Now let me take the next 49 minutes to tell you all the people that messed me up.
Does she need to go away, Chris, yes or no?
I think she does need to go away, and I think the Democratic Party, we need an opposition party. They do, but there's a vacuum now, and she'll probably use up the vacuum space until there's new leadership.
Marty, does she need to go away?
Yeah, she might want to hang out with the little comedian there and just go away for a while and let everything settle down and then come back when the air is a little clearer.
You need to have some integrity. Yeah. In spite of it, and Comey, did he influence? Yes, he did. But you ran a horrible campaign. There was no message. It was awful, and you just need to accept responsibility. And by the way, you're not going to be back in 2020.
No,
the only way you're back in 2020 is the show 2020 and witness
and
protection.
Joe Biden either. They got to start coming up with some other names.
All right, let's see what's in the news, Marty.
Well, our buddy Ben Carson, who we were kind of looking forward to early on in the race, we thought he might have something. He's now, as you know, the housing and urban development guy. And he said, I think poverty to a large extent is also a state of mind. Now, we've kind of talked about that with Walt Hampton a little bit. Everyone was in an uproar, but in a sense, we've talked about the Great Society and how people in the communities have become dependent. He might have said it a little clearer, but
I think it's too much of a broad brush.
There was a broad brush.
When you're in North End of Hartford and you have a single parent family, good luck pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. Yep. But his inclination is correct.
But if you talk to any or read anything about motivation or pull yourself up here in your bootstraps, change your life, it all starts with a mental state of mind. And some people have bigger obstacles. You say some people are born on third base and others aren't. Yep. But that state of mind, I think, is not so bad to consider as part of the equation.
Exactly. And speaking of a state of mind, we were remiss because we got involved in the baseball. My bad. Is there a pledge drive? We're about a little over halfway there. You need to go to WESUFM.org, click on the donation tab. It was my bad. I apologize. This station is great. Yep. You need to go to WESUFM.org, click on the donation tab, get it done. That was my bad. We all of us in the listening audience, go to WESUFM.org and make a donation. Yep. My bad. The station is
great.
Even
in Philadelphia should do that.
There you go. You need to do it. You need to do it now. Yep. Let's do the buzzwords.
Okay, buzzwords. Etiquette.
Out the door. Next.
Yeah, it seems old-fashioned, unfortunately.
Yep. The body slam.
Way overdone, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Please.
He still got elected. Memorial Day.
A great day. I love it. Well, I like watching old war movies, too.
Great day. Yes, I do enjoy the war movies as well.
Child marriage.
Don't know anything about it. Next.
Well, there seems to be many, many states that allow children under the age of 15 to get
Yikes.
married.
I think we can move on.
Okay, all right.
I'm not in favor of that.
I'm not okay, what about Sgt. Pepper, the 50-year anniversary of the album?
Beatles are still relevant, but for this station to be relevant, you need to go to WESUFM.org and click the donation tab. Last buzzword.
Israeli embassy.
It's not going to be moved, is it, Chris?
I don't think it's going to get moved.
Probably shouldn't be anyway. All right, Marty just loves. If dollar bills fell from heaven, he'd still have a problem. Anyway, thank all for listening, and have a great weekend. We'll be back next week with another exciting edition of The Buzz.
Bye, guys.